Originating from Houston, Texas, the fastest growing city in the world, MJWJ, Global Radio Network.
Holler until he hears you. Just look at somebody and smile at them in the face and tell them, say, neighbor, you need to holler until he hears you. You got to make up in your mind that I don't know where he is, but I'm going to get to where he is. And if I can't find him, I'm going to make enough noise where he can find me. I wish somebody would just touch somebody and tell them, say, it's almost time to make some noise. I said, he began to holler, Jesus, thou son of David, have mercy on me. He begins to holler at the top of his lungs. Can I tell y'all why he hollered? Because he could not see. So he understood that if he was going to get his breakthrough, since he could not get to him, he needed Jesus to come where he was. I stopped by here to tell him that you may be in a situation where you cannot see your way out, but don't sit there waiting on him to show up. But if somebody tells you that he's in the room, you need to holler. The more they tell you it don't take all that, the more you need to holler, because you don't know like I know what I need from the Lord. Yeah! Say yeah! Say yeah!
And with that being said, this is Marlon Smith, your host and timekeeper for the hour, and you have stepped onto the yard wherein Black Greek speak. So everybody get your good books together. It's time to go to church. Let's link up. Welcome, everyone, to Black Greek Speak. This is Marlon Smith. We're so glad that you have joined us here this evening. Look, we have had an awesome week this week. So many things going on. And we wanted to end on a conversation this week that I thought, hey, let's have a conversation on something. And I really don't like the idea of having conversations for superficial sake, or even because they can be hot topics. I really like to have conversations that I think will move us as not only as an individual or as people, but as a community of people who are trying to achieve something in life together. And I think that is for the peace of all people. So we're going to have a conversation on faith and Black Greek letter organizations. And I think that is a really kind of apropos, because we've just had this value summit going on in the Republican Party, where individuals are talking about faith and politics and how we kind of move and operate as a people, and how that faith is being informed. And so I really wanted to start by a conversation about Black Greeks and being Christian. So linked up with me today is our own Feel Good Morning Show host, Andrea Lynn. Say hello.
Hello.
And also joining us is one of our regulars here, Onita Gage.
Good afternoon.
You know, let me preface this by saying I didn't just pick people just to pick people. I really do pick individuals who I think can lend a great conversation. And some of you all may not know that our own Feel Good Morning Show host, Andrea Lynn, is actually a religious studies scholar.
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Yeah, you wouldn't believe it the way she acts. But
yeah, that's true. Say scholar. Scholar.
She's a scholar.
Scholar.
She's doing that PhD thing at Rice University. And so Andrea, I did invite you because I think that you can lend quite a bit to this conversation, not just because of the fact that you're a member of a Black Greek letter organization, the Divine Nine, a member of Delta Sigma Theta, but I think also because you really do lend a certain kind of theological and religious foundation that will allow us to kind of have this conversation that I think for a lot of people that can be very useful. As well as Onita Gage. Onita is not only a member of the Divine Nine, but she is also a minister of the Christian faith. Hello. And so I think that in a lot of ways we have a way to kind of talk about a lot of these spaces that I think that that you all can help us feel. And let me say to that also, I wanted to make sure that women were really speaking on this issue.
Thank you.
Because I think that there's some definitely some gaps and some informations that women can lend to this discussion. So let me preface that by saying that is one of the reasons that I invited you here, and I really do appreciate you joining me here on this conversation today. Listen, also for those of you who are out there on the internet, definitely you can join us by calling in at 800-970-8716 or also liking us on Facebook at Black Greek Speak with Marlon Smith and joining the thread discussion that is there. I already looked on there and people have already gotten started on that. So you're more than welcome to join us. Let me start by saying what brought this to me and why I thought that it was kind of an interesting conversation to have. And that is because I found out that within several of these organizations, they have an average of 1 or 2 persons every month who are denouncing their membership in lieu of now their theology and Christian faith. And I thought that was one really kind of perplexing in a way for me, because I'm like, okay, as a minister, as a theologian, I was like, okay, I'm not quite understanding where is that coming from, because I don't feel the need, either religiously, spiritually, or theologically, right, that I would need to renounce being a member of Kappa Alpha Psi. But in addition to that, when I heard that, I went on YouTube, and it was amazing to me the number of YouTube clips of members of AKA and KSI and Phi Beta Sigma and members of the Divine Nine who had actually, some of them had series on why they were denouncing their religious their membership based on these kind of theological tenets and ideas. And so I said, wow, I did not know that this was really the problem. And so I wanted to kind of have that discussion to say, okay, this is the issue. And part of the issue that I heard that was being voiced, that I want to kind of, and I'll ask you, Onita, to kind of help us start this conversation, and that is that there's something that they are saying that is antithetical between church and being a member of these Black Greek letter organizations. That some of the things that I heard in there is that they're idolatrous, that being in these organizations are creating idol gods, and that there's a reason that God is not pleased with individuals who are of the Christian faith, that God is not pleased with people who are in the Christian faith creating these kind of idolatrous things. So what are you thinking about? What do you think about as people are denouncing, or some people, let me say that, some people are denouncing their membership?
I think that there's a point at which you decide or determine what it is you do in your life that is going to void your Christianity or is going to bring negative light to your Christianity versus something that is not. And in this situation, I really feel like all Christians are not Greek, all Greeks are not Christian, but those Christians who happen to be Greek are not doing anything that is going to denounce who they are as a Christian. They're going to sacrifice Jesus as a Christian. So, I don't understand why they feel the need for that. I really want to understand that. But understand the things that we do that they find, and I say we, collectively, the Divine Nine, things that they find, I guess, that are sinful or that are bothersome or they're called into question. How is that different from anything that else is a sin? I mean, the Bible says that all sins are equal. So the things that they are saying that are wrong are also the same types of things that are happening in schools every day, happening in corporate America on a regular basis. Those same types of things are happening. So I just want to understand when they say that it's antithetical, based on what?
Well, maybe part of what they're saying, and I'm going to try my best to articulate their perspective, because I can't, I want to be, the problem of speaking for the other. That's not my belief, but I at least want to hear it so that it is at least, it is part of the community of conversation. And that is that they are saying that part of what is problematic is not the individual, but the institution itself is creating individuals vowing and pledging to an entity that is not Christ and Christ in himself, that we are vowing and pledging to those entities. And so I'm not saying that that's necessarily true. I'm saying I am saying that is what they're doing. And so we want to make sure that we can do that. People can join that conversation. Join us at 800-970-8716 or like us on Facebook at Black Greek Speak with Marlon Smith. We'll be right back and go deeper into that conversation.
Spanning the globe. MJWJ, Global Radio Network.
I'm live weekdays from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. at MJWJTalkRadio.com, the new home for confessions and other great talk programs. Listen to your feel-good talk network. Don't forget to like our Facebook page, MJWJ Global Radio Network. And if you're listening, make sure you give us a call at 1-800-970-8716.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Nickerson. I want you to stay tuned for my show, Wellnessity, The Wellness Show, your guide to healthier living, right here on MJWJTalkRadio.com.
You're listening to MJWJ, Global Radio Network, the feel-good talk radio network. The feel-good talk radio network.
And once again, you're here with us at Black Greek Speak. We're talking about, is there a conflict with being Christian and being in this Black Greek-led organization? Andre, I'm going to bring you in this conversation. You've heard this. And once again, I think I need to say this. This is not my perspective, right?
Okay.
But I don't want to just dismiss people because they have a differing view. I do want to say, let's at least hear what they're saying and try to address what they are saying. And so for you as a religious scholar, what are you thinking about this? I mean, what do you think is going on in their mind when they're thinking about that, what to be a member of these organizations is to be antithetical to being a Christian?
Well, first of all, I mean, let me first preface this by saying, if you think that you do anything in life that jeopardizes or challenges your faith, and you as a human being cannot stay true to your faith because of activities, then you should give it up. Right. If you believe that.
Okay.
And that's from going to church, or I mean, not going to church, but hanging out with certain friends, doing anything that you think you're not strong enough to handle, and it's going to somehow mess up your faith or change your faith or question or whatever you want to say, then leave. Now, the thing that what the problem that I have in this conversation is that the people who remain in the Greek then don't demonize the ones, because evidently we can balance the people who are staying, we balance it and we see the connection. So if I think that joining Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated actually allows me to utilize my Christian views and my theology, and I feel comfortable with it, then don't demonize me.
Well, see, they're going to say, okay, well, what if I say, well, I'm speaking as a Christian, and as a Christian, I need to say that these certain things we have to talk about, or have certain figures that represent Greek gods on crest or on shields, is antithetical to the Christian principles. And I need to say to Christians, we shouldn't do that.
Well, clean your own house before you start throwing stones.
What do you mean by that?
Meaning, as a Christian, I can name several churches that have images that would, according to the Bible, should not be there.
Like what?
Pictures of Jesus, actually. Pictures of God, actually. The crucifix can be an idol. The cross can be an idol. And if you go around killing and crucifying people in the name of the cross, what's the difference? And then inside the church, the dynamics of the church, how many times have we seen adultery, abuse of women in the church, issues going on in the church? If you feel that strong about that, and you left a Greek organization to go back to the church, you got enough problems within Baptist, Methodist, AME, Catholic, Lutheran.
Okay, so you're saying that people, if I see a problem, and once again, this is not my theological position, so I have to try to stretch and see what they're saying. But
I'm trying to help you.
If they say, okay, if there are problems in the church with idolatry, with fornication, with other things that are antithetical to the Christian principles that we understand are bedrock, then we should call them out of the church. Doesn't mean that I'm not supposed to call them out also in other places where I see them antithetical.
But you did the right thing. If you, instead of calling and actually did. You left. So that's the Christian thing to do. So leave and go and kick your dust off at your feet and move on. But to go around and start an actual campaign against the people who remain in the organization, knowing that if you are Greek and you pledge any of the Divine Nine, God is up in there all the way through. I don't know where you pledged or where you've been attending or what meetings you've been going to of the Divine Nine.
Yes.
Okay, I'm just saying of the Divine Nine.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just saying. So my whole thing is with the Divine Nine. My sentiment is this: you did the Christian thing to do. Leave the organization because it can no longer serve you on your spiritual walk. However, you are not to leave the organization and condemn or demonize those who stay.
Why can't they?
Because that would be an unchristian thing to do.
Really? Do you think it's unchristian, Olita?
I like the way she put that. I really do. I like the way she verbalized that, communicated that. One of the things that we have to get away from is that everybody wants to be the judge of someone else.
Right.
And we want to stick with the point of let you judge your own house. Let those without sin cast the first stone. So we want to judge ourselves. And if I'm not doing the right thing, I'm the Christian who's not doing the right thing. I wonder if some of these concerns, and it says it's been stated actually that it is, most of these concerns are people who've newly become Christian. Now, my question is, did the sorority or fraternity have anything to do with you seeing any of that Christianity come alive now that you think that you've become Christian, that you're going to lead?
So you're wondering, did part of your progression towards Christianity actually come through the organization? Let me say, part of that is that, and that's a good question.
That's a darn good question.
Well, one of the persons on the thread, and I want to read something because we talked about judging. So when people start saying, okay, well, judge, Onita, you're talking about this idea, well, we need to be careful how we judge. Well, somebody on the thread said that, and they said, well, it really depends on your commitment and everything else. But they also made the point that the Bible doesn't tell us not to judge according to what this person is saying. What this person is saying is that the Bible is telling you, can you stand up to the weight of judgment that you put out. Mm-hmm. And that's what it doesn't say that we shouldn't have any kind of judgment. It's not saying that. And so they're saying, well, we should be able to judge. It's just, can you stand up to the weight? And some people say, yeah, I can stand up to the weight of my judgment.
Yeah, well, I think we can. I mean, if you understand why you pledged any of the Divine Nine, it makes perfect sense. I mean, let's see, we're talking about economic development, political action, literacy, getting out into the community and making life better for all people. I'm just trying to figure out where we strain on the Christian principles here. And so I'm just saying, when you can actually have a sisterhood and a brotherhood and be like-minded individuals coming together with a purpose to improve the conditions of oppressed people, and even the word Divine Nine. Hello, I'm just trying to figure out where they're going with this.
They're saying that at the heart of this. And I don't want to dismiss. I'm not a dismissive type of person because I think that for them to dismiss us and for us to turn around and then dismiss them is to end up doing the same thing. And so I don't want to. I just want to make sure that for people who are listening and on Facebook, because I'm looking at some posts that I don't want to sound as if I'm dismissing their faith beliefs. I am asking though. Their statement is, are we doing this in the name? Is there a problem when we do this in the name of Delta or in the name of Kappa, as opposed to doing it in the name, for instance, of Christ? And does that mean that we are allowing Delta or Kappa or Alpha or AKA to be the leading force and the guiding force for that which we do? And Onita,
being someone who serves in ministry, and not just being a minister, but being someone who serves in ministry, being a participant at my church actively, I will say to you that if I'm going to outserve my church for Zeta, then I might consider that a situation. But if I'm in a leadership role at either location, I'm going to spend the weight of my time in that place where I'm the leader, because that's what I'm expected to be. Mm-hmm. But you have to learn your own balance in your own life.
Okay.
You have to figure that balance out for yourself. I think that if we are involved and we've committed our funds and we've committed our time, that's where your treasures are. That's what you consider important. While I don't make every sorority meeting, and I don't make every church service, but that doesn't take me out of being a Christian, and it doesn't erase me from being a Zeta. So you have to ask yourself, am I doing more for one than the other? And if it is that way, I'm doing more for the sorority than I'm doing for Jesus, then I might want to consider that. But understand, we're not at the point where we're saying that this is what you have to do, and we don't make these things happen for you. It's a personal choice.
You're here with us on Black Greek Speak. If you want to join the conversation, feel free to dial us at 800-970-8716 or like us on Facebook. You can join the conversation there. I've seen a couple of people who have made a few comments on Facebook at Black Greek Speak with Marlon Smith. We'll be right back in a few moments. And once again, you're here with us on Black Greek Speak. If you want to join the conversation, you can do so at dialing 800-970-8716. You can also like us on Facebook at Black Greek Speak with Marlon Smith. Anita, you made the statement about, really it's about where you kind of spend your time, right? Where you you need to check your investment, right? That maybe if you're investing more over here in, for instance, Kappa or Zeta or wherever, or Delta, as opposed to maybe in the church, then maybe there is a conversation that needs to be had. I would probably want to say, and I'm gonna jump on this side and then I'm gonna jump back on the other side again. But I think part of the thing is, I think about when I'm doing work for Kappa, I'm doing it because I am a Christian, and it's work that Christians should be doing, right? So that if Kappa is creating a road for which I am allowed to then express the Christian mission, then for me that becomes a vital place, right? That to me is what Jesus did, right?
Exactly.
And they're asking the question, why are you over here speaking to this taxpayer, right? Because this is where the mission needs to be done, right? If he's asking, even the woman at the well is asking the question, you don't speak to people like me. Why are you speaking to people like me? And Jesus said, if you know really who you was talking to, right, then you wouldn't have even asked that question. And I think the same thing happens for me in Black Greek-led organizations, that when you're asking me why am I over here, and my conversation would be, really, if you knew who you were talking to, you wouldn't even need to ask that question because I'm a Christian.
Well, for me also too, pledging or anything that I do, and being able to have free will. See, I didn't pledge Delta Sigma Theta. See, I think what's happening and why this is coming up is because a lot of the young people, things have changed within the reason why people go Greek. See, I didn't become a Delta. Delta didn't make me.
That's it.
Okay, so let's start there. Let's go old school, new school. Okay. See, new school, you being made. You thought you was a nobody, you didn't have nobody or whatever, and now you think you got Greek and now you somebody. See, the difference is old school, and I don't want to touch on, I'm going to make this young folks mad, but old school. See, I pledged Delta Sigma Theta because I was already a Delta. And I just got trying to stop trying to convince everybody and have long conversations about what type of person I was, because I was about the community and doing things and being successful and being in my community. When I put those letters on, see, I don't have to talk. See, now when I walk in the room, you automatically know.
But see, okay, there's a conversation though. But here's a problem with that. Here's a problem with that. I think what is being said, because as I looked at some of the YouTube clips of these young people who are denouncing their membership, and it's not just some young folk. Let me take that back. It's some older folk. Okay. I don't know when they pledged. Right. Some of us here we don't pledge a while ago, but I will say that part of what I think is interesting about this whole thing is that some of these young people, what they're saying about the organization is the pledge process. And they're saying that the pledge process that they went through, this having to dehumanize themselves, and that's the word that somebody used, and I don't believe that. I'm always challenged when people talk about dehumanization, because I'm wondering if servitude is equated in their minds as dehumanization. And I think, in my opinion, and I think that's a Christian principle, that in fact that we don't talk about more anymore because of the way the individuals are coming into the organization, is that the Christian principle is learning how to serve. And learning how to be humble. That's the Christian principle. The Bible says that the meek shall inherit the earth. And maybe part of the problem is we have people who are coming with too much pride, and that may be the issue. But that's me. I jumped off that side. But but Onita, to that, people are really talking about, right, this idea of pledging, and that what they are doing is antithetical in the pledge process itself. And that's part of what I'm hearing the problem is. What do you say?
Now let's discuss this. We had this conversation recently. You did a show a few weeks ago in reference to hazing.
Right.
And so in the pledge process, we want to go ahead and be completely clear. I did listen to part one of the YouTube clip, and it was basically about the hazing piece or the pledging piece regarding that. Now I want to be unbelievably clear. We submit to those things we want to submit to. Now, if you stood there and were foolish enough to let some of those things that were proposed to happen to you, then that was a choice you made. Let's be clear, though. You make that choice every day. You make that choice on your job. You make that choice in the car on the way to work. You make that choice when your children go to school, what school they can go to because they're zoned. You don't have complete reign of the whole city to take your child to. You have to go to the school that you live in, the school zone where you pay taxes. So those are things that you are boundaries that are set for you based on choices you made. So let's be clear. I want to start with number one. I don't condone hazing.
Okay.
That's our first thing.
Right.
I don't think that you should be swinging a paddle on anybody or pouring anything on anyone's hair or doing anything to in another person that dehumanizes them or makes them feel less than, because that's not the tenet of any of our organizations.
Right.
So then secondly, I want to be clear about the fact that you signed a Bill of Rights when you got started that said, I will not be hazed. So if you got started down that road and you let that happen, and you didn't take the necessary steps for it to stop happening, then that was on you. And I will tell you that there have been people who have not been admitted in our organizations because they let it happen. And once we found out from a national level, we said no thank you to you, and we said no thank you to our own brothers and sisters. Right. So what I need you to understand is that that was the legal and Christian thing to do. Period, the end. And I want you to be clear about the fact that if you decided and determined you got all that far, and decided that after all of this happened, then you want to take a stand, I have questions about you making the right decisions. Your decision-making skills, I call into question for myself.
Well, there's an issue. There's an issue that is really, I think, being conflated here, and that is about individual choices and organizational structures. If you decide, I think what you're saying, Onita, is if you decide in your own individual own moral agency, right? If your own kind of free will and choices to defy the organizational structure, then the organization is not what is antithetical necessarily to the Christian principle, right? Then it is some of the individual choices that you are making, which means that at some level it's the individual sin that needs to be kind of addressed.
Well, but that's the whole purpose of the pledge process. Like you said, to me, let me give this disclaimer. This may only be my view as an old school. Okay. But to me, the reason that I loved about pledging my sorority was because one of the things that we've been talking about for weeks now is that black folks don't know how to stick together. And the way the pledge process was done for me at Texas Christian University, I owed an ADA chapter. We understood that in order to make
Texas Christian.
Yeah, Texas Christian.
I was going to let her make it. I was going to let her finish a whole sentence, and then I was going to say, did you say you pledged at the Christian
University?
Because the president is Christian of the Christian University who had to approve the oncoming of the Greek letter organization on the campus. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay, but keep on going. Keep on going.
I'm with you. I'm with you. That's why I put that out there.
Yeah.
TCU Horned Frogs, baby. So okay.
She is a scholar. Y'all don't believe me, but she is a scholar.
Okay. So let me just say. So the whole idea, the way I understood about Delta Sigma Theta in our pledge process was it was about learning personalities and going through certain things that you had to do as a unit so that you could learn the people on your line's personalities. And then we even had names according to what your personality was. And you learned how your personality actually creates conflict when we're trying to work as a unit. Mm-hmm. And you learn from the people who are going through the moment with you what you need to change. A lot of times in the prospect, you find out things that you didn't even know about yourself in the process of getting it done. Right? And some things you have to learn how to do. And it was the whole thing of learning to work together. Yes, they were challenging things that we had to do, but it made you think.
Okay, I don't want to interrupt you, but I want to make sure because we're biased on this side. And so somebody could say, well, why do you have to talk bad about me? You have to yell in my face. Why do you have to have me up late at night? Why do you have to make me feel like I'm...
Ask your auntie. Ask your folks on the street corner. I mean, that's life. I mean, how many times are you going to walk in America, especially as a black person, and we look at the civil rights movement when they do the training for the nonviolence. Why did they sit there and let people in training for nonviolence to fight for freedom? People are going to kick you.
Well, answer your own question. Why did they do that?
Well, because it's to show your character and it's how you respond in the moment. It's what you do in it. How can you rise above the moment and be and show your character? And so the bottom line is, when you have a unit of sisters online, we're invincible. There's no words you can say. There's nothing you can do. There's no challenge. There's nothing that you can do. We are solid, and we're going to accomplish our goal. We know our what we're supposed to learn, and we know it well. And so therefore, it's a challenge, and it's not meant to degrade or to humiliate. It's to put you in situations that make you think, and think quickly, and think as a unit, and be able to work. And it's beautiful. It's one of the most beautiful experiences I have ever had. I have never thought in my life that working with sisters that I did not know from all over the world, all different personalities, online, coming together, and we made it happen. We crossed the burning sands, and we did it together, in spite of all of the odds. Now, what these young people have done with it, because they watched some Spike Lee movies and they got all caught up in hip hop, or they're coming to college with low self-esteem, I don't know. But from my understanding, when once you go through this type of process, you learn about yourself, your community, and what you need to do as an individual. And it was a beautiful thing. Now, I'm not going to say it was easy, but life ain't easy. Well,
I think one of the things that you kind of highlight, and I think, Onita, you said the same thing, is, and there's a word that we use in philosophy, and that's called pragmatism. And I think the part of the problem that many of us have not understood, and once again, I think that that's a structural issue. We took away the pragmatic philosophy within the pledging process. Mm-hmm. And I think what I mean by that is, the Christian experience is all about telling you how to endure. That's why it says things like, the race is not given to the strong nor to the swift, but to the one that endures to the end. And that gives us words like saying we are more than conquerors. You know, there are words in saying that so that we can understand how to go through trial, right? That's what but the problem with that is the trial that we go through as Christians is called life. And so I think the problem with many people, and I'll say this as a Christian kind of caveat in working in the church, is that usually a lot of Christians, not all Christians, a lot of Christians, when we come to trials in life, we've not had a pragmatic experience of taking our theology and our biblical understanding and then being able to apply it, right? Because we done been told, pray without ceasing, and that the prayers of the righteous availeth nothing. Be not weary in these places, right? We got the word, but we had no pragmatic experience to tie that word to that. So when the experience come, we had no real kind of pragmatic
and let me just say this right quick for you, though. But anybody who's pledged in the Divine Nine, it was nothing but Jesus that got you through the pledge process.
But what I mean by that...
nothing but the Lord.
But what I mean by that, I'm just saying. But what I'm saying ultimately, and that's a long way of saying, that pledging became the pragmatic experience of taking your experience of trial and the information that you're learning, and then saying, now you got to figure out how to do these both together. And sometimes there's a divide in our everyday life. So when we get, and I've worked in the church, and people, and Onita, you probably know this, is that you'll find people that when they start going through hard times, the places that they won't go to is the church, right? But I think that the experience within pledging should be, and these are broad generalizations, but the experience within pledging should be, when I go through hard times, I think about what I went through online and how I made it over.
Thank you.
But that's a pragmatic experience, and I think that we're not used to having that pragmatic living.
This younger generation.
Maybe
it might be some of all of them. I think that we need to consider the fact that when you talk about the whole process of pledging, the whole process of being part of a group, you maybe weren't prepared for what that looked like.
Right. Exactly.
There's a song that the kids sing called "When I Move, You Move." It required you all to move together. In Christianity, we find a way to do without. And there's a divide in that situation. Christianity is Christianity. It's a very large umbrella that people have created a lot of strands and a lot of pieces under that same umbrella to work with. And so you have to consider the fact that if you're going to do this, if you're going to talk about, I can't be Greek if I'm a Christian, then why is it that you didn't have those same feelings before? I mentioned a few moments ago, and we talked about this on the break, but we pray before and at the close of every meeting.
Right.
I pray before and at the close of every church service. Some people pray before and at the close of every time that they go to their job. So you have to ask yourself. That's why I alluded to the fact that did you learn something about Jesus when you were in the meeting? Now you got to lead a meeting just to go to church. But what we do community-wise is what we're supposed to be doing. The scripture says, am I my brother's keeper? The answer is yes, you are.
But you know what's interesting about that? Let me before you say that, Andre, what is interesting about that is in Genesis where God asked, in this kind of Cain and Abel conversation going on when Cain kills Abel, right? And that when God asked Cain, like, where is your brother? And Cain responds like, am I my brother's keeper? Here's what's very interesting. The rest of the story, even though Cain never says yes, the rest of the story is to show us the answer for Cain that is never answered. And that's what I mean by pragmatic living. The pledge process initially, for those who kind of equate, the pledge process is supposed to be that answer. It is supposed to be the answer you're answering. Yes, you don't even have to say it. How do I know I'm my brother's keeper? I remember when I was online, a brother came up to me and said, I saw you walking on the grass over there, going to the gym, and you can't tell him I wasn't going over. You're a lie. I did that, right? So I said, yes, sir. He said, yeah, when you was going over there at noontime. And I said, I know who that is. That was my line brother, right? Because I had to then take on the weight of his irresponsibility. Somebody said, well, why you got making me, why you won't allow me to walk on grass? And see, this is where I may get in trouble with some of our Divine Nine organizations in the change of the pledge process, is that we don't teach people now that life is about boundaries, that sometimes life is about restrictions and learning how to operate in the restricted place. And I think that may be part of what you're talking about, Andrea, is that you have to learn how to operate there.
Well, no, I mean, that's how life is. And if you can go with it with people and you're going into an organization to achieve a goal, and the pledge process was that process. And like I said, and like I keep saying before, who are you as an individual and where are you going? And let me say this for sure. Some people need Jesus. Some people need to be in the church Wednesday through Sunday. And let me just give you an example, because I've listened to some people who go over and found Jesus and now they want to condemn everything. Well, when I listen to your path and your story that led you to Jesus, well, see, when you drank Patron, you was on the table with your shirt off and was going around in the room and stuff. See, so, and we tried to get you off the table. And you can't because you had your alcohol. And when you got your alcohol, then you just turn into a whole nother person. Well, you know what? If we can't get you off the table and you can't stop drinking the Patron and Jesus can make you do that, oh, by God, please go get Jesus. And you need to stay with Jesus every day. And if Jesus can make you stay off the table and stop drinking Patron and stop beating folks and start doing things that you were doing and running the streets and doing all the whoremongering and all of the things that you say that God turned your life around, then that's good. That's what you need to do. On the other hand, I can take one sip of Patron and take my behind home. I don't stand on the table. See, so therefore I can still do the things. Now, you can't be mad at me because I can balance that and you can. And that's what Jesus is for. If you can't do it, by all means, please go to your nearest church and stay up in there as long as you need to do. Okay,
this comes from the scholar. This comes from the PhD scholar.
I'm just saying, but no, let's just keep it real. But at the same time, everybody has a different path. Everybody has a different cross to bear, and no one can be mad at anybody who says that they are in love and constantly involved and turn their whole life to Jesus. And if that's what you need to do, then by God, do it. But do not condemn those who have different challenges that are not like yours. And that's not what I need. That I've got other things to do, and I can do both. Or more.
Well, there is the issue, right? And maybe some people will say, I can do more, but it's not about me doing more. It is what you are doing and what the organization stands for. And I think what some of what you're saying is that's not necessarily the structure. Those are some individual choices that you made, that you propelled onto the organization. That maybe that's an issue that we need to kind of address.
Don't blame it on the alcohol.
Don't blame it on the alcohol. Listen, you can always join us in the conversation. 800-970-8716 or like us on Black Greek Speak with Marlon Smith on Facebook. We'll be right back in one moment. You're back with us on Black Greek Speak with Marlon Smith. You can always join the conversation. Remember dialing us at 800-970-8716. You can also join the conversation by joining the thread on Black Greek Speak with Marlon Smith on Facebook. Facebook and liking us there. Now that the Reverend Andrea Lynn has spoken,
Well, I'm just saying.
you know, she said the word to us. That I do want to. We talked about the pledging. We talked about the kind of the individual choices. But I think the other thing that individuals have had concern with, Onita, that I'm hearing, right, is through one, the idea of rituals, that these organizations have rituals, and that these organizations have symbols, and that those symbols and those rituals, and I've heard that. I don't know if you've heard that. Why do you have to be secretive? You know, and if these organizations are kind of secret societies, and that they have rituals and they have symbols that because of that having rituals and symbols is antithetical to Christianity as well.
I want to know, have they ever read the Old Testament?
You don't have to read the Old Testament like the New Testament has.
Well, you know, there are things that was not shared with everyone in the Bible. The way that the synagogues were set up, you couldn't get to certain layers and certain levels of the church. So tell me why you think that everything is supposed to be exposed and supposed to be shared. Now, you don't want us to be secretive. Okay, I understand. But there are things that we don't know about that happens in our great nation every day.
Well, you know what?
And we are definitely members of the United States of America, and we pay membership dues to be taxes. So why are you trying to make this one entity, these 9 organizations, such a standout, sore thumb, community type, anti-people organizations? And I say that because now you blame it because we don't believe in Jesus. That's not true. You telling me that some of the things we've done counters the Christian,
mission
Christian mission values, goals, and all that. But I mean, do you speed down the highway? That's a sin. You broke the law. You are supposed to respect your authorities, and that is an authoritative moment over you because you are a member of the United States and you are in Houston, Texas, or wherever you are, driving faster than the speed limit. So how do you take those things and parallel them? The secretive and the rituals. Everything has a ritual. There's a process for everything. So we have the way we go in to do a funeral. That's the most public thing that we do.
Right.
In uniform, in uniformity with a certain pen, do certain things. Okay, but we have rituals at church.
Right.
At one Baptist church that I know here in the city, there is a 2 people who walk down the aisle before church starts. They call acolytes, and they light a candle. That's a ritual.
But you know what's interesting? You know what's interesting about that? Because we think about rituals, and I think sometimes part of the issue is that we don't think about the words that we use in fuller context, right? When I cook, I actually do a ritual that I go through in cooking. One of the things that I have to do is I have to clean my house before my kitchen has to be sparkling clean before I actually start cooking. I have to clean up, and then after I clean up, then I have to set out all of my pots that I know I'm going to use to cook in this process, right? And then after I set out all the I literally then get all of the seasonings that I know I'm going to use, and I set them in places where I know I'm going to need them. So if I need the salt and pepper over here, I put it over here, and if I need the garlic I put it in the place where I know I'm going to need it in the sense of my ritual. And what I think some people don't sometimes understand is that ritual is just a formal routine that everyone goes through, right? It's not, but somehow we've equated this idea of ritual, I think, as having only negative,
Well, and it's also a little bit of self-hatred. Let me just say that, right? I mean,
what do you mean by that?
I'm just saying. I mean, like you said, given the examples that you're giving here, I mean, try to walk up in the pulpit and you're not a pastor. Sit in the chair at your local church and see what happens to you. Okay, so and see what secret organization you getting ready to get into. You've been violated. I'm just saying. I mean, so some of these things. I'm trying to understand, and I'm not. And like I said, I'm for you if that's what you think you need to do. But what I find that I think is so interesting about this, how come you just can't find Jesus and move on? and dust your feet off. Where if this is, because you get rid of things when you go to Jesus, and if getting rid of the Greek organization is a part of your journey, then be at peace with that.
Well, let me do this because here's what somebody said. Somebody just sent me a note over here, and they're saying the problem about being a Christian and Greek is that yes, they are quote founded on Christian principles, but are the organizations, quote, grounded in Christian principles? Do we structure our organizations and plan while maintaining such principles?
Oh, let's see. You have free will.
What does that have to do with Christian principles?
Okay, because that's what God gave us, the will.
But equate that to Christian principles.
Wait a minute, hold on. First of all, the big challenge is your free choice, your choice to make. So people choose to pledge. Then when you get in there, you're supposed to have discernment. And so we give you the opportunity to discern whether or not this is an organization.
So then somebody can discern and say that these principles then are not grounded in Christian principles. See, because that's his argument. I want to make sure that we're answering people's questions.
Okay, let's say that.
He says that the problem about being a Christian and a Greek is that, yes, they are founded on Christian principles. But are the organizations, quote, grounded, the organizations, are they grounded in Christian principles? And here's where I think we need to answer that question more directly, because I don't want to be flip with people.
Well,
I'm not being flip. I'm being straight honest. I'm just saying, because let me say that this is because of the simple fact that I'm not being flippant. I'm not going to let somebody say, just like they're not going to say.
But these are Greek people. This is the person who sent me is an active Greek person.
No, they're not. They're ex-Greeks.
No, this person who sent me this text is a member of a Greek letter organization who is active now.
Oh, and they're asking that we're not grounded?
They're saying, but are the organizations, quote, grounded in Christian principles?
Okay, let me go with that one.
Okay.
First of all, part of what is biblical, part of what Jesus says in the book of John says, I leave you to serve one another. At the Last Supper, Jesus says, I'm washing your feet so that you may wash the feet of others. So in our groundedness in Christianity, if we are an organization that turns inward versus we're stepping outward, then we're not grounded. If you have a community service project on a regular enough basis, once a month is what I would say regular enough, then you are then grounded in what your cause is supposed to be. I think that at the point at which we determine whether we're doing what we're called to do is, did you lay your mission and vision and values and goals out and consider your projects against them? If all we do is party, and I'm speaking at the graduate level at this point in time, if all we do is party, and we always having soirees and jazz nights, but we're never having, the March of Dimes, Walk for Babies, the breast cancer awareness, free mammogram services, the Feed the Homeless, to educate our kids, go tutoring. If we are not doing those projects, then we are falling short of those values and goals and our groundedness in our Christianity as it surrounds our organization.
Here's the problem that I have kind of with the whole conversation, and I don't. And I've been trying to listen, but and part of what we do is we don't sometimes answer people's questions. The first question is, yes, we are grounded in Christian principles, because you can't be founded on something and then not grounded in them. So that's the first thing. So if they were founded in this issue, then that means they're grounded there. The question is, why are we not building on the foundation that we laid there? So that if you are then not praying, for instance, at the beginning of your meeting, that's not the organization. That's you being antithetical to the organization. So we have to ask ourselves, are we being true then to the organization, or are we creating something that the organization is not? You can join us still on the conversation, 800-970-8716, or you can like us on Facebook at Black Greek Speak with Marlon Smith. And you're back with us on Black Greek Speak with Marlon Smith. Listen, you can still like us on Facebook at Black Greek Speak, and you can join that conversation, that thread. I see people, I have to get people to start joining the thread, because they'll send me these private notes on Facebook and things. So I'm like, join the conversation. Don't make me answer all these questions. But I don't mind. I do just want to do a wrap up, and that is, we're asking these real questions. This is a beginning of a real conversation. And for some people, this is really real. This is a very real experience. And for them, I think that they are conflicted. And I'm not necessarily going to say, as Andre, if this is really your faith belief and it is keeping you constrained that you should leave, I want to make sure that you're at least asking the real questions, and that you're really,
Well, but that's just it. That's a part of the faith, and it's a part of your journey, and you're finding yourself and who you are and what your mission and what your purpose is. You are going to give up some things, and you're going to find new things. And if sometimes you have to step away from the organization for you to get more grounded in your Christian faith, by all means, because we are a Christian organization. And if you need to step away so you can get better, closer to God, I don't find nobody in the Divine Nine that believes in God that have a problem with that. We still gonna love you, and because you did pledge, we're still gonna be brotherly and loving to you as the Christian.
Even though you're on Facebook talking bad about us.
Even if that's what I'm saying. See, this is what I'm saying. See, you're known by your walk, and it's easy to talk about you believe in God, but do you walk it? And so the thing is, and so the fact that the Divine Nine can say peace be upon you and you go your free way. And if we still see you, we're going to throw the Noop sign, or we're going to throw the Delta sign, or we're going to still talk to you, and you're still a Sarah, because that's what it's all about. Now, because you kick us to the end because you can't manage it, I question your Christian reason. See, I question I question with your Christianity.
Any final words that you want to kind of give to these individuals who are asking and struggling or questioning this kind of dialogue, Onita?
I want to share that I think that you need to reconsider who you really are. When you made the decision to join a Greek-led organization, were you trying to find yourself? Were you seeking an identity? Were you having some type of identity crisis? Being centered in Christ is going to allow you to understand that there are things that are about you that are layered into you, and there's no way to really do what Christ said to do just inside the church. Again, you can't just be inward and all about Christ without serving others. There's no way to do that. That's what he did all the time. And the times that he was outside ministering to others far outnumber the times he was inside teaching in the synagogue, and he taught with the purpose of you going out to teach. So when you are inside the church, are you there learning so that you can go out to teach, or are you in there learning so you can come out and criticize? And if you're doing those types of things, that is antithetical. And so you got to look at some things that are, and that's a far reaching thing than, am I going to be in this sorority or fraternity or not?
Right.
It became a part of your identity. It became the identity that you had. And when you were associated, when I walk around, I don't have to wear my letters. I don't have to put it on my car. People who've known me for a long time, or they see my key ring, you're a Zeta. And now I'm the Zeta that they know.
Right.
But they knew me first because I was a Christian author, teacher, preacher, and all of that, way before they knew I was a member of Zeta Phi Beta sorority.
Right.
So
I think that that's a great thing. And this is a conversation that I know that we'll come back to, because I know people have some other questions and concerns that we didn't, and some topics that we didn't get a chance to discuss on here. But I really do want to say to people who are really wrestling with that is that the Bible says, seek ye first the kingdom of God and all of his righteousness, and all other things will be added unto you. And I think that will happen. So if you're really seeking God, he'll really reveal everything that you need to know. Listen, we always say on here that remember one thing, that everyone can't do everything, but if everybody did something, then everything will get done. We appreciate you linking up with us. See you on the next time.
You're listening to MJWJ, Global Radio Network, the Feel Good Talk Radio Network. The Feel Good Talk Radio Network.